A lot of people don't know his name. Frank Burke is one of the greatest players in Dublin GA history.
He was an extraordinary athlete and player.
He deserves to be recognised as one of the great, not only the great Dublin GA players, but one of the great Duel players of all time.
Frank Burke was also one of the most courageous men. The man who spent 3 days and nights on the roof of the GPO during the 1916 Rising, as all the buildings around it were ablaze, showed equal courage in the blue shirt of Dublin, winning 3 All-Ireland football and 2 hurling medals. Sheer good fortune saved his life in the Bloody Sunday massacre at Croke Park in 1920. Frank was a student of Padraig Pearse at St Enda's School in Rathfarnham.
It was the 6th of September 1909 that he arrived at Collinswood House, met by Mrs. Pearse. He described her as being a lovely old homely type of woman. And then she introduced him to her son Patrick, whom he thought was rather shy at the time. But
Frank was captain of both the football and hurling teams at school, but he continued to board at St Enda's after leaving the school to study at nearby UCD. By this stage, influenced by Pearse, Frank was a member of the Irish Volunteers, along with other ex-pupils who continued to live at the school. St Enda's became known as the School of the Revolution, as 5 of the executed leaders of the 1916 Rising were teaching there. Pearse, his brother William, Con Colbert, Thomas MacDonagh and Eamon Cant.
Patrick Pearse's whole ideal for setting up St Enda's was he wanted to give people an Irish education. He detested the British system of education. So what he wants to do is give a kind of all-inclusive education based on the Irish society, Irish cultural values, Irish education. So when people like Frank Burke went to that school, I mean, they're immersed in the Irish language, they're immersed in Irish history and culture, and of course, very much so, hurling was promoted. Con Colbert, of course, one of the executed leaders in 1916, he actually worked as the physical education teacher in St Enda's, and of course he very much promotes hurling in this. So that's very much, so I mean there is a huge raft of students from St Enda's are actually in the GPO in 1916, and they follow Pearse into the GPO. But I mean they are immersed in this idea of an Irish Ireland, a Gaelic speaking, Gaelic games playing country, and of course as Pearse becomes more radical, so many of you students also become radical.
Before the week before the Rising, Pearse was addressing the volunteers here in Rathfarnham and on military matters, but he suddenly stopped and he said to them, "I hope you're all ready to meet your God." And they sort of sat up, and he advised them all to make sure that they went to confession before they went out on those manoeuvres. So they guessed what they knew. I think the Yank Kilgallen, he had a camera, and he took a photograph of the 9 of them. It was the 10th. It was an extraordinary photograph taken Easter Sunday morning. Easter Monday then, he had to get up early, and they were to meet at 10 o'clock at the church. So they went down with fully armed, down to Rathfarnham Church. They met the others. There was 37 of them from Rathfarnham. They marched up through the village to get the tram, number 17 tram. Then they got as far as Jacob's a biscuit factory there. The volunteers had taken over. So they knew things were happening there. And they heard the attack on the Dublin Castle. The driver refused to go any further from the Bank of Ireland. So they had to get out and walk from there to Liberty Hall. From there, then they were ordered up to the GPO. He was posted to the roof of the GPO, and he was on the roof. Eamon Bulfin raised the flag.
Frank remained on the roof of the GPO for 3 days and nights, protecting the flag of the Irish Republic, while the British bombarded Sackville Street, as O'Connell Street was then called, and the surrounding area.
Cleary's opposite, and all that side was one mass of flames. The Metropole Hotel, which was next to the GPO, that was all in flames, right down to the Liffey. And he said that when he was on the roof of the GPO, he could feel the heat coming from Cleary's. It was so intense. He always had a certain fear of fire after that. But
was he in fear of his life at that stage?
No, it's extraordinary in a way that didn't seem to worry him at all, like, you know. When if he was to die, that was it, like, you know. When they had to leave the GPO, they had to go across the Henry Street, diagonally across from the door nearest the arcade, and they had to run on ones and twos together, or charge across. And he thought the machine gun firing was coming from both ends, from our street, though the pillar was in the way, I think, but certainly from Mary Street, and there was continual machine gun firing. And he didn't think that any of them would get across, but nobody was injured. They got across. He said he never ran as fast in his life before or since, but he got across anyway.
Frank was eventually captured in a building on Moore Street, and they were marched to the Rotunda Hospital. They were then sent to an internment camp in Wales called Fronguk, where the prisoners played Gaelic football. On his release, Frank resumed his GAA career with immediate success.
Dublin had qualified for the senior hurling final. Collegians, with whom he played, had won the championship in 1917 for the first time, senior hurling championship. And at that time, the team that won the championship generally represented the county, plus a few others. So he was on the panel, and he wasn't actually on the team, he was on the panel. But the morning of the All-Ireland final was in October, when they arrived at Croke Park, casual enough, like he wasn't playing, so he wasn't nervy or anything like that. He was told to strip up by your playing. And one of the players didn't train hard enough, so he was dropped on that morning and that was put on. So his first inter-county hurling match was the All-Ireland final.
Frank won his second All-Ireland hurling medal in the 1920 final as the Dubs beat Cork by 4-9 to 4-3. On November the 21st, 1920, Frank was at the centre of the Bloody Sunday tragedy.
In the morning, Michael Collins, who's in head of the intelligence section of the IRA, realises that the British net is closing. He realises that the noose is tightening on the IRA in Dublin, and so unless he he gets his blow in first, they might all be eliminated. So he plans this very daring intelligence coup by which they select 18-20 suspected British Army spies, and they go out and assassinate them.
Now, in retaliation, of course, the auxiliaries and the police force in Dublin retaliate by coming to Croke Park and carrying out an attack on the stadium. They don't go in with machine guns like you'll see in the Michael Collins film, but they go in, they're going in to search and to check everybody. That causes panic, and then shooting breaks out, mainly from the police side, and of course 6 people are killed, which is kind of complete disaster. And the propaganda of kind of negativity that comes around the world, in America and in France, of the British authorities going into what is a sporting occasion and carrying out an attack like that is a complete disaster for them from a kind of a public point of view around the world.
Tip were the top football team in Ireland at that time. And so they went out on the pitch, and he was delighted to find that his opponent was Mick Hogan, whom he knew. And they had been at the Cayley a couple of weeks beforehand together. And suddenly the ball came across the diagonal pass across the field, or whatever you like to call it nowadays. But he ran for the ball, and he said he was just about to catch the ball when the shooting started. And he thought they were blanks. But then he saw the pandemonium and the stands, and the people running all over the place. Realised it was real bullets. And they threw themselves flat on the ground and started crawling as best they could towards towards Hill 16. There's a cycle track around Croke Park and a small wall, and they thought, as Hogan said, if they could get behind that wall, they might get some shelter. And next second he said, "My God, I'm shot." And the Hob was beside him. When he heard him say that, he said, "I think, my God, Frank, I'm shot." And Dad stood up and called for a priest. And some priest came in from spectators to attend to him. And I got out, there was a lull there, and he got out onto Hill 16 when he was confronted by a black and tan who stuck a gun into his stomach. Two towns came and they searched the pockets of the players and took what they could get out of it, and then told us to dress and get out.
And he did say that he didn't come home for a few days.
Frank?
Yeah, he stayed around Drumcondra, he said. He didn't know why, but he didn't feel like going back. You know, it was a terrible traumatic event, you know. He was affected by it, and he stayed around Drumcondra for a while.
Frank's outstanding attacking skills helped Dublin footballers to huge success following the tragedy. They won All-Ireland titles in 1921, 1922 and 1923.
If I was asked to sit down and write out a team of Dublin players, be it hurling or football, I'd have Frank Burke on that. The very fact that he's unique, All-Ireland medals, not a medal, in both codes, 2 in hurling, 3 in football, would entitle him to be there, and people would be delighted to see his likes there. As the man from the Blasket Island said, "Ní bheidh go le héad a rí seán."
While enjoying his glittering GA career, Frank became principal of St Enda's School, but he kept the office exactly as Padraig Pearse had left it, until the school closed in 1935. With this magnificent record, Frank Burke will always hold a special place in Dublin GA history. Truly one of the greats.